He's not entirely wrong. I think if you looked at the 2024 election and have talked to voters since then, they would tell you, Democratic voters, that they are sick and tired of the establishment. They're sick of the status quo. They want something different. So, what did the geniuses at the DSCC do? They went and found the most typical politician you could. They recruited based on resume. 4-term congresswoman, tons of relationships in D.C., could raise gobs of money. Guess what? People do not vote on resumes anymore. They want someone who can speak to the anger, who can call for change, who can, excite them to go out and vote. And that was not something that Haley Stevens offered. And this idea of electability, I hate that we discuss it so much, but let me tell you something. Electability is not something that can be conferred by people in Washington, D.C. It is the voters who decide what is electable. And what is electable, more electable in this cycle, at least in this Democratic primary, is someone who understands the anger that voters feel versus someone who is just presenting a traditional political resume.
One of the things that I have heard over and over again as I've been talking to people on the ground in Michigan over the last weeks, but definitely the last few days in preparation for today, is that there's a big frustration, a strong frustration at the establishment, at the DSCC, at Chuck Schumer, at Gillibrand, at the folks who came in and kind of tried to pick their own candidate instead of letting it happen. And then picking the candidate that someone told me today, not my words, milquetoast. I didn't say it. They said it. And I think that when you look at how voters, as Liz was talking about, voters think about electability, the idea that everyone in D.C. knows better than both the strategists on the ground in these states and, more importantly, the voters on the ground in these states, it's no longer rings true. People are not accepting the idea that you can tell me as a person who lives in the state who is electable.
Well, this example has been interesting to me in that you have a candidate who has had just gobs more money. 4-1, Haley Stevens has outspent in what outside spending, and then Abdul El Sayed, what he has had. And yet, I will be shocked if he does not smoke her in this race tonight, just because of the factors that you're talking about, the establishment frustration. And in that interview with Chris Jansen, you saw a candidate that's already looking at the general election, and he's talking about the establishment because his next move is going to be to paint Mike Rogers as an establishment Republican, and that's not going to be that hard to do. Now, I do think it's going to be a very tough race, and Republicans have a lot of ready-made ads, but you look at this cycle, and they were insistent upon Haley Stevens instead of looking at who in the race had the political talent and how could they try to mold the candidate to what they wanted him to be, much like they fought Mamdani in the beginning, early stages, too, when it clearly he had a political gift.
And Mike Rogers has been just walking through the daffodils with no one attacking him.
And we should note, Mr. Chairman, the voters are voting right now, and so we don't know what they're going to do in the primary. I know what the polls say, but
we don't
if the polls voted Bernie Sanders would, if the polls don't always tell the truth.
No, polls don't because polls don't vote. People do, but the only people who are voting are the people you turn out. And so there, you begin to understand that this is a process. I just had, listening to you, Liz, just an enormously wonderful flashback.
I'm scared.
Welcome to my Tea Party.
Wait, I was going to say that. Oh, my God.
Because what you described is exactly what I heard in the first meeting I had with Tea Party representatives from around the country. 50 of them came to Washington to meet with me in about March, April of 2010, and they were PO'd. And everything you said about the establishment, the size of government, no one's listening to me, my voice is not heard, no one gives a damn about me, you guys just take money from me and I don't get anything in return. That then with the Tea Party, of course, was built around the idea of constitutional norms and principles that Republican had advocated but had abdicated along the way. So for the Democrats, welcome to my Tea Party, because that's where you are. Now, don't get it twisted. What you're seeing emerge, and I said this when you had Occupy Wall Street, which rose at the same time, it just flatlined a lot sooner. But that element that you're seeing now inside the Democratic Party has been there since before 2006. Yeah. It gave rise to your boss man, Bernie Sanders. Yeah. And it was why in 2016 you had electors out there, voters, who said, I like both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
Yes.
And what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about the combination, and Elise knows this from her work in the focus groups that she does. We're talking about a combination of voters who are going to decide who the next senator of this state is going to be. So with that as the backdrop to my question, I don't have a question. All right? Because I really because you and I think are on the same page here, so I just turn it to you.
Well, and you know what, Chairman, I was coming in here tonight and I was going to say, I finally feel like we are actually having our Democratic Tea Party moment. And that's something that you know a lot about from 2010. And when, again, the Republican establishment put up all these credential candidates, everyone with all the degrees, everything. And what Republican voters said was, we are so pissed. We are so disenchanted with these choices. We would rather burn the house down than vote for these people.
They said they would rather give us a witch.
Yeah. They did elect somebody that had to do the video, I am not a witch. Here's the thing. Here's the thing I think is interesting. There is nuance here, though, because not every candidate that the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee has selected is one that the voters have rejected.
Right. Correct.
The people won't be honest and say it, but I know on good authority that those senators privately told me that Tallarico was their guy. Okay? And Tallarico won out in Texas. There are other candidates that, I think in Maine and Michigan are two very clear examples of where Chuck Schumer got it wrong, but there are places where Chuck Schumer got it right. The question is, are they close to where the voters are now? Right. Can they still, is their picker off or is their picker on? And I think we're gonna see what it looks like in this when it comes to tonight and then in the general election. Here's the thing though. I do think that it's a Tea Party moment, but this has been brewing. Yes, Occupy Wall Street, but people have been building over the course of the last couple of cycles. When I worked for Senator Sanders in 2015, 2016, the things that he was saying and talking about were, as y'all know, they were on the fringe at the time. Now, many of those things have become mainstream conversation to the point where you have the Mamdanis, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, the Ayanna Pressley. Ayanna Pressley is run sometime in the vein, the Congresswoman, in the vein of that. Now you've got the Senate race that we're looking at right here in Michigan.
It's true for Trump, too, because that was the fringe of where Republicans were on, tariffs and things like that.
Yeah, and now it's coming into the mainstream. Right. So I think voters are not necessarily voting for not even necessarily. In my opinion, they're not voting for Democratic Socialist establishment. They're voting for the fighters.
That's an important point to make.
I was just at the Democratic Socialist Association. I was at their summit on Friday, and
how many people were there?
It was 900 people. They have 120,000 people in their organization, so they're not as big as everyone thinks. But I think we focus too much on the labels. I think the voters, like Simone is saying, they're not focusing on the labels as much. They want someone who's going to tussle, and they want someone to be the avatar of their pain and anxiety.
As long as it's not in the mode of witchcraft and abolishing Thanksgiving.
Right.
And as long as it's ideas that are more you can't be saying you're going to abolish Thanksgiving in a football state.
We got to wrap it. You get one last word.
But yes.
Yes, and so this is what the problem is now we are going into a general election where a lot of Michiganders will see Mike Rogers on one end and likely Abdul El-Sayed on the other end and not see where their politics are. Well, and I think it is going to be a very test. It's going to be a very big test. And you know what? It is the first big test for the far left in a swing state.
Yep.